Welcome, everybody, to the SoxProspects.com podcast, the web's number one source for information on the Boston Red Sox from top to bottom, from Fort Myers to Worcester, across the Pike to Fenway, and all stops in between. Thank you all for listening. My name is Chris Hatfield, and I'm the executive editor of Sox Prospects, and I'm joined, as always, by our director of scouting, Ian Kundle. Ian, to open the show this week, I'm curious, which Red Sox player are you most interested in seeing Zapruder film quality photographs taken at great distance of them running 50% effort sprints on turf down in Fort Myers over the next week and a half?
Well, first off, I would love to be down in Florida doing that right
now. Oh, yes. Zero shade being thrown
especially after we're coming off of a weekend where it was like negative 30 here one night.
Yeah.
With wind chill. But I think the one for me is Garrett Whitlock, because we saw how immobile he was at the end of last season when he was trying to pitch through that hip injury.
Yes.
So it would be nice to see him out there and moving fluidly again, because obviously I think this is with the amount of questions they have in the starting rotation, this is a pretty big, camp for him to get ready for that, for his first season as a full-time starter.
It is. For me, it's kind of funny because we did get Garrett Whitlock today. I'm interested in seeing Chris Sale just do athletic activities without.
Are you sure you want him doing athletic activities?
That's led
to injury the last couple of years. So
I would like to see photographs of him sitting on a bench.
No, I'd like to see him wrapped in bubble wrap until the season starts.
Bubble wrap in one of those in between inning promotion plastic bubbles.
Well, that sounds dangerous. I don't want that.
That's true. Anyway, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for downloading, for streaming, whatever it is you're doing to listen to the show. We appreciate it. Of course, if you want to support the show, there are a few ways you can do that. You can rate and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever podcatcher you're on. You can tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a cousin, tell an aunt, tell the guy up the road that smells kind of weird and is always out grilling no matter what the temperature is outside in a threadbare robe. You can support us on patreon.com as well. Patreon.com/SoxProspects. Pledge a certain amount per episode and get some neat perks in return. And of course, if you want to send us an email, you can do so at podcast@SoxProspects.com. We got a bunch of your emails again for this episode, so we're going to talk a bunch about those. We're going to talk about the latest batch of top 100 lists and organization rankings, a couple of trades, new batch of NRIs, our updated rankings, and as I mentioned, your emails. So Ian, let's get right to it. Let's get to the thing that's really been kind of blowing up on Twitter and things. I did a newspaper interview today about it. The latest batch of rankings came from Kylie McDaniel at ESPN.com and Keith Law at The Athletic. And both of them released their top 100 lists and their organization rankings. And last episode, we talked about how it seemed like a consensus was forming around Marcelo Meyer being a top 20-ish prospect, Tristan Casas being a top 30-ish prospect.
Yeah, 30 to 40.
30 to 40.
Yeah.
Ceddanne Rafaela being in like the 70s to 80s. And then Miguel Bleis being in like the 90s.
I would say, yeah, Rafael and Bleis both back-end top 100 guys.
Back-end top 100 guys.
Yeah, 75 to 100 range.
These rankings both kind of blew that up a little bit. Kylie McDaniel, apostrophe S. Kylie McDaniel's rankings came out first. He only ranked 3 of them. He ranked, let's see here. He also ranked the Red Sox 14th in his organization rankings. So that was interesting. And I think probably about where I expected, maybe a shade towards the higher end.
Yeah, I think around 15th was where I was expecting.
Yeah.
I think they're right in the middle. They have some good things. They're carried by their high-end talent, but I think that having those top couple guys goes a long way. And then they have some interesting guys later. But yeah, I think like right in the middle of the pack is about fair.
Yep. And he ranked Marcelo Meyer 7th, highest ranking for Meyer so far. Casas 37th, about consensus. Miguel Bleis 95th, again about consensus, but he had Rafaela unranked, but with like an honorable mention for being a top,
which I personally, that's the order we have them in, and I think that's about right. Rafaela to me is like right on the edge. Like if he was in the top 100, it's the last 10. If he's, one of the first 15 to 20 out, that's fine too. Like as we've talked about it, I think ad nauseum this offseason, since he's been obviously one of the more popular guys to talk about, but this defense is incredible. There's a ton of like there. there's serious questions with the bat, and I completely understand why you would leave him off the top 100, knowing that,
Mhm.
or wondering with that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Meanwhile, over on the Athletic, Heath Law released his organization rankings in his top 100. I'm pulling up his top 100 right now. He has the one that I do remember. I say Don Rafael at 37. The second
I have
number
it
two
all. I have it.
prospect.
I have it all right here. If you want
You
me to,
do, yeah. If you've
yeah.
got the numbers in front of you, I'm trying to
He has
find them right
Meyer at
now.
11,
Yep.
Rafael at 37, Costas at 40, and Blaze at 72.
Which high for Blaze, normal for Meyer, normal for Casas, super high on Rafaela. Yet has the system at 23. He released his system list today as well. And look, I know people want to hear us talk about system lists and stuff like that. I really don't know at this stage of how we do things that's worth doing, because look, like, you want to see what we think of someone's list, go look at our rankings. Like that's what to look at, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
We're gonna have a difference of opinion.
all this stuff is a snapshot in time. A lot of it, like,
Yeah.
if you're not seeing all the guys, it's all dependent on who you talk to. Like, I mean, I know that there are certain guys that we have ranked a certain way that I know scouts and people who would disagree with me. I also know scouts and people who agree with me. So it's like it's all a lot of it is personal preference with these lists. It's who you're talking to, things like that. You're muted.
Yep. We don't have a consensus on guys within the staff,
Yeah, exactly. So it's like
right?
it's there's going to be differing of opinions, and it is what it is.
Yeah. But as far as the org rankings, I mean, look, I don't know enough about every single other system to put an organization ranking together. I got asked that today. And I had to beg off of it because just like, look, I just don't have that kind of breadth of knowledge of other systems. I can tell you based on this system where I feel like it roughly should be. 23 seemed a little low.
Yeah.
14 maybe, a shade high. I just was very surprised that Keith had them that low, given how high he had Rafaela and Blaze compared to other rankings. But then I guess part of it is just, he also had, I don't know, different order of his own rankings. I don't know. It was interesting to me. I know the reason we're even talking about this is that I know
Oh, it was a
people wanted
Boston
us to.
radio conversation.
Oh, well,
This
the
week.
radio conversation was based on this ranking. Yeah. I mean, like Tony Maz and John Tomasi seized
Yeah,
on it.
people were using it as an excuse to basically say that Pine Bloom hasn't been doing a good job or hasn't been doing his job with the farm system.
Which I mean, let's see what BA and MLB Pipeline say.
Yeah. Well, and
know?
and the thing is, and I'm not gonna read what Law said or anything because I think it's behind a paywall, but on a granular level, some of the things he said I do agree with in his description of the system.
And to be clear, when you say not going to read, you mean you have read it, you're not going to read it.
Yes, sorry. Yes, I have read it, but I'm not going to read it on here. Yeah. The Athletic does great work. If you want to read it, check it out there. But yeah, I agree with some of his points, but I just think that I just think the overall ranking, you can say what he's saying about pretty much a lot of systems in the game. And that was kind of the feedback I got just talking to a few people around the game who had read the same thing, was his critiques apply to a lot of teams. And with the high end talent the Red Sox have with their position players, it should be enough to carry them at least to the middle of, the 15, even inside the top 20. Cause I don't know how you can have them. And I understand it's not in a vacuum because you're not comparing where they were last year to this year. They fell in Keith Law's rankings, quote unquote. And I understand
20th to 23rd.
the teams around them can change. But
sure.
I just don't. Yeah, I don't know how you can say the system now is weaker than it was a year ago. I don't agree with that. But as you said,
it doesn't make any sense to me. No.
Yeah. So
I mean, I guess what you would read the argument to play devil's advocate is Brian Bayo graduated, Jaron Duran graduated, Dahlbeck had already graduated.
But the problem is Duran isn't, neither Duran or Dahlbeck are that good. So it's
So it's Bayo. I mean, Duran is was a top 10 guy last year. But that said, I feel like you've backfilled with Blaze and Rafaela, who weren't
Romero.
that high last year.
Added Romero, you added Anthony. Paulinho took a big step forward. Some of the pitchers did, the low level pitchers. Obviously the upper
came back healthy.
Yeah, the upper minors pitchers obviously had some issues. That's definitely a critique. But I don't know. I mean, and the thing is, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like these rankings are fun to talk about, but it's all going to come down to what happens on the field.
Yeah, and
So yeah, we'll see.
it's
I mean, we'll see.
arbitrary because Bayo doesn't count, right?
It doesn't count by what, 8 innings or something,
Right. And that's I said that today.
which is can I just do an aside?
Yeah.
It's the two things. The fact that, I mean, we talked a little bit last week. The fact that like comp picks are being decided by these lists is just so crazy to me. Like
Bonkers.
because there's just a completely different like criteria by some of the lists. Like a great example is Gabriel Moreno with the Diamondbacks. He's on some of the lists, even though he's technically not Rookie of the Year eligible. Because like some of them don't use the criteria, and then ESPN is one of them. And like
Baseball
so
America's
Baseball America.
Baseball America's top 30 list counts Connor Wong still. Like, I know he's on there.
But this is a big one. Like Moreno is on the BA and ESPN list. And so he's taking a spot from someone else, even though he's not Rookie of the Year eligible. So he's not award eligible. So it's like,
it's weird.
Or like, as you said, with like the guys coming over from Asia, like some of them are BA ranks them. None of the other people do. Or maybe MLB doesn't rank them either. Right.
I don't believe so.
Yeah. So it's
put it this way. No one, neither MLB or ESPN had Yoshida.
Right. And so it's just like, that is just, I don't know. I just think it's interesting that they are like, I could understand if you had them operating all under the same criteria for what is a rookie and what is not. But
yeah,
it's just interesting to me that things that matter and have a real tangible MLB value are being decided by lists that have completely different criteria and how they are made.
To counterpoint, just for the sake of getting the points out there, you could argue the reason not to impose the Moreno point is different, but with like the Yoshida point, you could almost argue like, yeah, it's okay if he's not on the list because he's not really what the TPP or what is the prospect. It's got an abbreviation. It's like TPP.
Oh yeah, I don't know what it's called, but yeah.
Yeah,
it wasn't
intended. The point of it isn't to make sure that you call up your
30-something-year-old
Japanese.
Well, no, or the guys who go straight to
right.
But then don't make them Rookie of the Year eligible. Like
right, because now like you're like the guy that finishes third doesn't get his team a pick.
Exactly. It has just I don't know. It's just something that I think should have been maybe a little more thought through. But anyway,
I mean, we called that at the time, but at any rate, we're getting in the weeds on this. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is really to say on the rankings. They're interesting. I kind of see where they're going. Law in his comments answered a question about Rafaela where the problems were chase and not swing and miss related. And I wanted to mention because there was a tweet, I think at us or at him again. And I know I'm being kind of a broken record here. The problem with Rafaela is not and never has been swing and miss. The problem is chasing, and he makes bad contact on those pitches. Like you can't make good contact.
Yeah, his quality of contact is really low. Like his hard hit rate is it was in Portland, it was 27.2%, which is not good. It was like MLB average 30.3. And so hard hit rate is the number of balls hit that are harder than 95 miles an hour. And yeah, he's sub 30% in Portland. Like that's well below average.
Right. And so
you want that number to be closer to 40 than 30.
And that's dragged down by the poor contact in that, like in the bottom, whatever quarter, that's all stuff he should.
Well, but even his high end stuff isn't that good. Like it's like his 90th, like his like higher end stuff is like 100, 102. For like 90th, 95th, his max is obviously higher than that. But the more consistent is, there's a good Fangraphs article about that if you want to check it out today too, about basically how 95th percentile exit velocity is a better predictor than max, because max, there are outliers with that. It's more stable basically. It's by Ben Clemens. But I would definitely check it out. But Rafaela and those metrics is not very good either. So it's quality of contact. And then, as you said, chase, like his chase rate in Portland was 42%, and Greenville is 38%. It got worse against better pitching. And that's really not good. Like it's one of the top 5 highest in the entire system.
Mm-hmm. And it's not a he doesn't walk thing either, which like,
no, I don't care about
better. It'd be great if he walked more, but like, I don't care. Like if he were Nomar Garciaparra or Vlad Guerrero hitting rockets on those pitches outside the zone, that might be different. But
there are guys who can get away without walking. And like, that's and we talked about a lot, like not all walks are created equal. Like with him, I don't care about the walks. It's the fact that he's, he gets himself out chasing pitches that he shouldn't be swinging at.
Right. Anything else on the ranking stuff, Ian? I mean, it's all, we've said it all. So let's get into stuff that happened actually in real life with real players. Last episode, Matt Barnes had been designated for assignment when we recorded, I believe. On January the 30th, the Red Sox traded Barnes and cash basically to make the contracts a wash to Miami for Richard Blyer. Blyer basically becomes he's the lefty, right? Yeah, he's
Mhm.
fills the
Second
lefty
lefty.
spot that they vacated when Josh Taylor was traded.
Yep.
I like it.
Yeah,
I
think
think it's solid,
Blyer fits the team a lot better than Barnes does.
and vice versa.
Yeah,
Vice
I
versa.
think, obviously Barnes got used a lot. We talked about last episode, but
Yeah.
in the way the team was constructed, especially when they went out and got Kenley Jansen, they got Chris Martin, they got Wyatt Mills. Like, they'd gone out and got 3 righty relievers, and they were already bringing back Schreiber and Houck most likely, and Brazier in the bullpen. Like, they needed a lefty, they didn't need another righty. So
So they got
to be able
Joely
to,
Rodriguez.
flip Barnes for another, going down that route again, a strike throwing guy who generates a ton of weak contact. Like,
Yep. Doesn't strike a lot of guys out.
no, but I think what they needed is they needed a lefty who you're comfortable bringing in, with bases loaded, 1 out in the 8th inning, or bases loaded, 1 out in the 7th inning. Like, Joely Rodriguez is not a good fit for that, given his command and control is a little iffy. Blyer, someone you're comfortable when you bring him in, he's going to get a ground ball and get weak contact, because that's what he does. And I think that is exactly what the bullpen needs. It's what they've been targeting. Guys like Jansen, Martin, Blyer all throw a ton of strikes, and I think it's a great fit. And the fact that they were able to get him for Barnes basically straight up, I think, is a really nice move by the Red Sox.
Yep, for sure. And then the counter move to that, making another spot on the 40-man roster, was the designation for assignment of Franklin Herman, who at the time I believe was our number 22 prospect in the rankings. Who then later was flipped the following week to the White Sox for right-handed reliever and blacksmith Theo Denlinger, which is the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Literally a blacksmith. Like, that's not a joke. He has a forge.
Yeah, and he has like a workshop with a forge and like an anvil.
Yeah,
which I just think is sweet.
So badass.
He makes like swords and stuff.
Yeah, like he does commissions and stuff, but he makes
cool.
like
there's a lot of articles,
bat handles.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, we needed someone like this in the org after Big Joe retired.
Yes,
so
yes. I mean, you've heard of an axe handle bat. How about a bat handle axe?
Yeah,
Theo's your guy.
Exactly, and he's like, I think it like. All right, let's talk about the German DFA first, because there were a lot of people upset about this.
Yes,
and it made sense. Like, as we talked about for a while, they were running out of 40-man spots. Like, they were getting down into the weeds here, and Ryan Brazier's not going anywhere for now. And they clearly had decided that Caleb Ort and Zach Kelly are ahead of German on the right-handed depth org ranks.
Yep.
And you can only have so many like righty only, middle relievers in AAA for depth. Like, with those two already there and more established, it just kind of left them in a position where Herman, I don't even know what it's supposed to. Herman is the odd man out. And the fact that they basically were able to flip him for a guy with a similar profile who just doesn't have to be on the 40 for a couple of years shows that, like, he's a good prospect as like a potential 6th inning guy, but he was never a closer of the future. Like, his stuff, it's good stuff. It's not great. It's okay command. Like, it's 60, 50, 50. Like, it's not like there's no overwhelming secondary pitch that you like to see from guys that you project in like to be quality middle relievers for 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
And I think that was the end of the day. Like, those are the type of fungible relief, like depth guys that you move on from when you need the spot. And they basically were able to trade him for a guy in Denlinger who has a similar ceiling. He's just 2 years away. And that was kind of how I tweeted about it. But how a scout described it to me is like, you take one guy, you trade a guy now for what could be him in 2 years, and you save a 40-man spot, which they needed. And so I think it's a fine deal. Like, I'm not surprised he got DFA'd. And yeah, I think that Denlinger is interesting and has some interesting characteristics that, fit what they need. And most importantly, he was a 2021 draftee, so you don't have to worry about the 40-man for a few years.
Yeah, drafted the round after Taylor Broadway, who 2 days
it's kind of
prior.
wild. They have 2 members of the White Sox 2021 draft class
Yeah.
in their Portland bullpen probably next year. So
Broadway might be in Worcester. I think we actually moved Broadway's
maybe, I don't
projection up
know.
to
He
Worcester
could be.
because Broadway was one of a number of guys who got non-roster invitations to spring training a couple days before the Herman Denlinger trade. That list included relief pitchers Dan Altavilla, Taylor Broadway, Durbin Feltman, Chase Shugart, and starter Victor Santos. Infielders Christian Koss, Matthew Lugo, I guess utility guys Ryan Fitzgerald and Nick Sogard, and catcher Steven Scott. None of those particularly surprising. Lugo maybe a little bit, but keep in mind that the club is going to have extra bodies in camp because of the World Baseball Classic. So it's going to be a somewhat larger than usual spring training roster. Given I think they're going to have like 10 to 12 guys is the estimate in the WBC. Today was when the rosters were supposed to come out, actually, and I don't know if they did.
I know I saw that Kenley Jansen said he wasn't going to pitch unless they made the semifinals today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw that. Because he doesn't want to disrupt his like plans unless it's meaningful or something. I don't know. Those are my words, not his, but just basically he doesn't want to disrupt his plans at the start of spring training.
So yeah, I mean, I guess so that means like the first, like the pool round, he won't be there, but if they make the final pool, okay. That's it. That's
because isn't the Netherlands games in like Asia? Or did I make that up?
I don't know.
I thought their qualifiers were like in Taiwan or something.
It's possible.
Let me look.
It's possible.
And because I think it was wait, let me see. Yeah, they are.
Pool A and Pool B are in Asia. Pool C and Pool D are in the US.
Yeah, I don't know how to see this. This website's really bad. Like I just click schedule and they just don't have one.
I got it right here. So the Netherlands
Pool A. Netherlands are Pool A. Yeah. So so they're that if you're having to pitch like real games on March 9th in Taiwan, that's going to disrupt your schedule for getting ready for the start of the season.
Yeah, I mean,
and frankly, I don't know this. I do wonder if Jansen having to adjust the pitch clock played into his decision to pull out because
interesting.
He's obviously is one of the slower delivers. That's going to be an adjustment for him.
Well, and so the thing is so in Pool A, you've got Netherlands, which could have potentially featured Jansen and is potentially going to feature Ceddanne Rafaela, which I think is different because he's not a guy you're counting on to start the year. I'm okay with him getting that experience.
Yeah, if he wants to go, that's fine with me.
Yeah. In Pool B in Japan, you're going to have Masataka Yoshida out there, which does he report? I guess he reports and then just flies back.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah.
Because they report what, next week?
Yeah, I guess they report soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then in Pool C in Arizona, it's going to be the U.S., Mexico, Colombia, Canada, and Great Britain. So Canada is going to have Nick Pivetta. Team USA doesn't have any Red Sox now, actually. Now,
because Story was going to, but he's not there anymore.
Mexico was potentially going to feature Duran.
Marcelo Myers on their 50-man list too.
But he's not going to be there.
Probably not. No, and I think Casas said he wasn't going with Puerto Rico either.
Casas said he's not playing for Puerto Rico. Yeah, I've got the list right here. So of those teams, Colombia, Jorge Alfaro is going to be with them.
I would assume he would play. Yeah, that would make sense.
Alfaro. Ronaldo Hernandez was on a preliminary roster but hasn't been mentioned, so I presume that means he's probably not going to play. And Rio Gomez was on a preliminary roster for Colombia. I can't imagine he's going to play. And then in Pool D, which is Puerto Rico, Venezuela, the Dominican Republic, Israel, and Nicaragua, which I think is the pool of death in this bracket. Puerto Rico is going to feature Christian Arroyo and Kike Hernandez. The Dominican Republic team is going to feature Rafael Devers. The Israel team is going to feature Richard Blyer and Ryan Sheriff, who's going to be in camp on a non-roster invite. I think that's Alex Verdugo is playing for Mexico. That's what it was. I knew
Hernandez and Arroyo are probably going to play a decent amount, especially now that Correa pulled out too.
Yeah.
So what they have Lindor still, but
that pool is going to be based a lot on who plays because the Dominican lost a bunch of guys too. They lost a bunch of their pitchers. They lost Theo. They lost
their original projected lineup was just insane.
But the
Like,
thing is it never works out that way.
no, but I just remember looking at
Yeah.
back in the fall when people were projecting it out.
It was going to be like the year they ran the table. Like
Yeah.
they
Should we
were.
talk about Denlinger a little bit before we moved on? Because we never
Sure. Tell
really.
us about Theo Denlinger, other than the fact that he's a blacksmith.
Yeah, no. So I was able to got to talk to some scouts about him and watch some video. And last year in across high A and double A, 48 and a third innings, 4.47 ERA, 1.32 WHIP, 66 strikeouts, 21 walks. He's a big guy, 6'3", 250 ish. I've seen anywhere from like
Yeah.
240 to 255 for his weight.
Denlinger looks like a blacksmith.
He's jacked too. It's not big. It's muscular. But yeah, fastball 93 to 96 is what I was told. Slider, breaking ball 79 to 82. Fastball is his best pitch, and really that's the carrying tool here. It's got good characteristics, and it's something like it can miss bats up, good life, good movement. So that's an interesting pitch. Secondary pitches, the slider is kind of a work in progress. And Chad Jennings at The Athletic said that I think he heard that Denlinger was working on a cutter and a two-seamer last year. So that's something I'll be keeping an eye out when we see him in camp. And yeah, just he's another guy who could be like maybe up and down reliever, maybe ceiling is like a sixth inning guy, but it's a solid depth arm to have. And with relievers, as we've seen, that's the position where you can come out of nowhere and make the majors, and you can kind of catch lightning in a bottle and get a useful guy for a couple years. So yeah, I think it's a perfectly adequate return, and just adds another power arm to the high minors bullpen staple that they're kind of building, which is good because obviously they've lost a few of those guys this year. So between Denlinger getting hopefully Ryan Fernandez back healthy, you've obviously still got Kelly and Ord on the 40 man. They've got some depth there still.
Denlinger entered our rankings today at number 46, which I think might be a good segue into talking about our rankings update. And basically, this was born out of the number of guys that have left the system since our end of season rankings. I think it's up to 6 now, between losing Ward and Politi in the Rule 5 draft, the Herman trade, the Siebold DFA and trade, I guess, for cash or a player to be named. And who's the other one? I am missing. Jeter Downs getting claimed by the Nationals, as well as Jacob Wallace being traded.
Ward.
But yeah, I said the Rule 5 guys. And then Jacob Wallace was also traded as well. So some changes, and we just wanted to kind of add in some other feedback we'd gotten and analysis we'd gotten and done since the last ranking. And I guess the big movers, Ian, first Ryan Fernandez moving up from 37 to 27, which is really 36 to 27 because of Herman was ranked at the time that the last time we had rankings up. So Herman came down. So take one off of all the movement. So up basically 9 spots. I said on Twitter, I think it's basically a lot of that is continued analysis and feedback we got on him and doing our Rule 5 prep in part, as well as, combining that with our firsthand looks and data we had, appearances in the Red Sox plans because he was invited to their rookie development program, as which was basically all guys who they pretty much expect will be up this year. So I think that's the reason for that movement. I don't know if you've got anything to add on that one.
No, I think you said it.
Yep. The big movement down was Ronaldo Hernandez dropping from 24 to 38. I guess he would have been 25 to 38. Big drop. I think part of that was, just again, reevaluating a guy, and part of it just the fact that he cleared waivers and didn't get claimed, I think speaks somewhat to how it speaks a lot to what teams think of him as a player.
Yeah, I think, as you said, you get just gathering additional information, talking to additional sources, and kind of getting a better feel for how he's viewed around the game. And as you said, the fact that he was DFA'd and cleared kind of says a lot about what he's viewed as.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Tyler Uberstein moved down a few spots. He moved down, I believe, the equivalent of 5 or 6 spots to 34. Again, I think that's just kind of adjusting, reconsidering a player. The debut of Denlinger at 46, as well as we added Odanier Mosqueda at 48. And that was, look, when a guy's a pending minor league free agent, to some degree, we kind of, look, if he's not coming up, he's not a guy we necessarily will focus on making sure we have ranked. Not to say that it ever happens. It certainly has happened that minor league free agents have been ranked and then leave the system. It's happened plenty of times. But with him re-signing, him seemingly becoming a guy that they're really thinking about might make a contribution at the major league level this year. He has non-roster invitation to spring training.
Some good feedback too from scouts.
Good feedback. I mean,
like,
you look at the numbers bear it out too. I mean,
he's good at lefties. He maybe could be like, I think the bar for lefties is just so low. Like if he was a right-handed pitcher, he probably doesn't get on the list. But the fact that they don't have many lefties in the organization, they made a priority to re-sign. There's some people think he's got a chance to be like pitch in the major leagues, kind of like how Bobby Pointer did, up and down for a few years. That's someone who belongs ranked at least in the back end of the list.
Sure. And then we had some minor movement in the back end of some guys, in the last 8 spots or 7 spots or so. So just kind of rejiggering. You can check them out at soxprospects.com. The whole list is up there for you to take a look at. For patrons, we'll get our individual top 30s on there as well as our next 10 guys on the outside looking in. We'll get those up there for you in the coming days. So you can check that out. Finally, Ian, I guess there is emails. As always, we love getting your emails at podcast@soxprospects.com because we want to talk about what you all want to hear about. So here we go with your many emails from our last episode. First, our first email comes from the email name is from Almond, but I think he goes by something else on Twitter. But at any rate, he says, "Hi, Chris and Ian. I have a question about hit tool evaluations. On BA's newest top 100 list, they have Masataka Yoshida at 87 with a 55 hit tool. That's the same as the 89th ranked prospect, Oscar Colas. Yoshida is a career 9.4% K percentage hitter in MPB, including an absurd 6.6% in the last 3 seasons, while Colas has struck out 20+% at almost every level. My question is, how much does stats in the high minors affect the evaluation of a prospect's hit tool? If player A has a better swing than B in most scouts' evaluations, but player B has a significantly lower K percentage in the high minors than A, will player B's hit tool be rated higher than player A's?" Thanks as always. Ian, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, to me, first thing is you're comparing NPB to,
well,
it's not quite apples to apples.
I also think that it's the way that I understand what BA is doing is like, you can think Yoshida has a 55 hit tool and he's just he's probably that right now. Whereas I think what they're saying is that Colas has that's what they project him in the future. Like Colas doesn't have a 55 hit tool right now.
Yes, correct.
And I think that's the confusing part is they're not, because I don't know what Blaze is on there. I'm guessing probably a 50 or a 55. They're not saying Miguel Blaze will be
hit
what do
tool.
they have on there?
Well, maybe I guess if they're doing future projection. Yeah,
right. But that's my point is it's confusing because you're comparing someone who is going straight to the majors, who's played professionally, significant time, obviously over in Asia, versus a guy who was in AA last year or high A or whatever, except they're using the same grading scale for it. And so that's what's I think that is a little confusing is they're not saying that Colas could do that right now. And so that's kind of, and I can't speak to his hit tool. I've never seen him, but that's, I think, the confusion there.
Blaze at 88, they give a 50 hit.
Right. So that's my point is they're not saying that Blaze is a 50 right now. They're saying that that's what he could be in his peak. And so if that's what they think with Colas or Blaze is someone I could speak better to, I would agree with that. That's fair.
And by the way, hit tool is just not strikeout percentage.
No,
that's quality contact.
I was going to get there too,
yeah,
but yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, no, hit tool is I guess the simplest way, really taking it simply is what do you project their average to be at the major league level in their peak and then over the course of their career? It's not because there are guys who, have a 40 hit tool, but can have a year where they hit 280 or 300 and vice versa. There are guys who are plus hitters who can, hit 220 in a year. But it's just over the bulk of their career. What do they think they're going to hit when it comes to average? And it's not really strikeout rate obviously is a part of it, but it's not solely tied to strikeout rate. There are guys with a high strikeout rate who are good hitters too. There's just a lot of different factors that go into it beyond just looking at strikeout rate. But it's how the swing works. How are they against off speed pitches? What's their quality of contact like? what parts of the strike zone can they get to? Are they able to get to the ball ever in the strike zone? Like, there's a lot of things that go into hit tool beyond just looking at like strikeout rate.
Well said. Our next email comes from Sam, and he says, "Hey guys, I was listening to the most recent episode, and the question about whether teams could be more aggressive with initial assignments with guys like Meyer, and was thinking about all the guys you mentioned making it to the bigs at 19, and I feel like they're all international guys. Do you think there's a generic advantage to international guys making the bigs extremely young because they can be in the system at 16 rather than pretty much every high school draft guy being at 18 or older? It's hard to compare the competition level of wooden bat DSL or FCL ball to high school ball at elite schools in Florida and California, but safe to say it's probably higher in those pro leagues and teams. And it seems teams just generally aren't comfortable saying we're going to start this guy in Greenville because we're confident in what we've seen from him in high school. A guy like Meyer, who starts in the Florida Complex League, could dominate at every level for 3 years and still not be in the bigs till he's 21 because he couldn't go pro till he was 18, while Juan Soto signed when he was 16. Obviously, not a huge difference, but it affects what age these guys hit free agency and therefore their future earning potential. Just a thought I had. I think there's an argument to be made. The international signing age should be raised to 18. I know those kids go to baseball academies and probably put school on a back burner from a young age, but if they're good, but with how many never make MLB or perform well there, if they do, it does make somewhat uncomfortable that a lot of them didn't finish high school. Obviously, this ties in with minor league pay, recent minor league unionization, and all that. Would love to know your thoughts. Thanks, Sam. All right, so two complete different things there, I think, Ian. First is guys making the major leagues before they're 20, and I think, yeah, obviously international guys have a much better chance to do that because they sign so much sooner.
But it's also like very rare. Like,
well, it's rare, but it's also math, right? Like if you are drafted at 18, your chances of making the big leagues
you realistically probably won't have played your first full season until you're 19.
Right. It's
and
just barely possible, or if you let's say you get drafted at 17 because you're reclassified like a Blaze Jordan. Well, the guys that reclassify usually wind up going from older to younger, not like uber young.
Right. But even if you're drafted at 17, it means because you turn 18, like in that draft, you're still, and then, like maybe you play your first season at 18 still, but it's not that much of a difference.
And look, I mean, the thing too is that it's not like like you just said, it's not like there are a lot of guys doing this.
No, it's like 1 or 2 a year at most. It's like,
I don't think it's even that many. It's I mean, like of the recent ones, we can probably name like 4 from the last.
It's probably not even 1 or 2 a year. It's probably one every like 2 or 3 years.
One every 2 or 3 years.
Like Acuna, Soto, Julio, like it's all like alien types.
And I mean, look, like the point is, it's not like international guys move fast. It's just that the alien high school kids are 20 and 21 when they debut, and then you get college guys who aren't even drafted till they're 21. So, yeah, I think it's just math.
I mean, because like look at like Bobby Witt last year. Bobby Witt made the big leagues last year as a 21-year-old. And his progression was 2019 rookie ball, 2021 AA and AAA, 2022 majors. Like, that's about as quick as you're going to get with, and that's with a skipped year.
Yeah, with COVID. Yeah,
but like it's just as you said, it's just inherent with the way the system is currently designed.
As for international players not signing until 18, I see the argument. I just don't know enough about like what these guys are doing in other countries at that time instead if they're not playing baseball, right? Like it's
I'm not educated enough about what the why it is 16 and what the arguments for it to be 16 and 18
right
either way to make to comment on it.
And I don't want to insert my foot in my mouth, so I think I'm going to leave that one be. Sorry to duck it, but I just don't, it's not, I don't think it's quite as obvious as they don't have a high school degree or not.
It's not.
Next question. Our next question, we got a question from our friend Aaron Meta about the Keith Law top 100 list. He seemed to downplay the questions about swing and miss. This was the email I was referring to, where it's about chase over in zone miss. Or if it was a positive sign. And again, that's what we were referring to. So I thought it was a tweet, but it was this email from Aaron we were talking about earlier. So thank you, Aaron, for the email. Our next email comes from Josh. He says, "Hi, Chris and Ian. This could be a tough one to answer, but I was wondering if players that get DFA'd typically understand why. Often it's that they weren't good enough, of course, but other times the deciding factor is roster construction, service time, remaining options, contract status, likelihood of being claimed, etc. Do GMs typically explain their logic to the players they move? I feel for these guys, especially the ones that are far from home and haven't made it to the big leagues yet. So I can't help but hope they don't take a DFA as a quote, I was the worst player on the team and they didn't want me, end quote. Thanks, Josh. Well, first of all, I mean, getting DFA doesn't necessarily mean you're getting released. So keep that in mind. A lot of these guys do find other gigs. There aren't a lot of guys that get DFA'd and never play in the majors again, or never play professional baseball again, even like international, like Hirokazu Sawamura, is just signed with a Japanese team. Like these guys will play baseball again. You were on a 40-man roster. It's kind of funny he mentions that though. I was laughing because they just had that Matt Barnes interview where he apparently he asked Heim why, and Heim explained exactly why they DFA'd him apparently. So I guess they do if they want to know. I don't know if it's consistent or not, but yeah, I mean, look, it's a business and these guys need to understand that it's a business. And hopefully by the time you're on a 40-man roster, you do. Our next question comes from Dylan. He says, now that the roster has become clearer, I've found myself pondering the ceilings of some of our new/young players. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what a 90th percentile outcome would be for guys like Bayo. Is he Luis Castillo light? Casas, Mario Mushroom Rizzo, and Yoshida. Bad defense, Brian Giles. Thanks again for the pod. Absolutely a must listen. Thanks, Dylan, for the email. 90th percentile outcomes for those three, Ian. Bayo, middle of the rotation starter?
No, 90th would be like probably a 2, like a low end 2.
Okay.
Because I think
Casas,
like
yeah,
Bayo, like like if you really, really, really want to say like 100%, 1% at most chance, probably less than that. Like maybe he's like a high end 2, low end ace, but like realistically, like a 90th would probably be like, yeah, like a 2.
Mm-hmm.
Casas would be like, if you're saying like the top end scale is Freddie Freeman, then yeah, it's like probably whatever, just slightly
Poor
like
man's Freddie Freeman.
a 60 first baseman, like an everyday first baseman, occasional all-star type. Like I don't know who I'm trying to think of, like a 60 first baseman, like Rizzo. That's a yeah, probably Rizzo's a little under Freeman, I would say. It's a reasonable comparison.
You think that's a 90th percentile outcome as Rizzo? I think that's like a 95th. Like
I
not
don't
to
know.
quibble, but
Maybe I
like,
forget how good Rizzo has been. Let's see.
I mean, recent Rizzo maybe more than like peak Rizzo. Peak Rizzo was a stud.
Yeah, peak Rizzo was really good. I'm like, peak Rizzo was like MVP, finishing top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peak
I mean,
Rizzo is Freeman.
yeah. Well, no, Freeman's better, I think. What are their career wars? Let's look.
Well, I mean, whatever. And then Yoshida, I'm going to punt on because I've
I
never
have
seen
no
the guy
clue.
play.
Yeah.
Like we'd be guessing. Like,
Yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, because the thing too is just MLB teams are completely different on their evaluations of him. I don't know what to tell you on Yoshida. You looking that up, or should we go to the next one?
No, I'm looking up. I'm actually curious what their career. So Rizzo's career WAR is 35.
Okay.
This is on Fangraphs. Freeman's page is not loading. Exciting podcasting.
Awesome audio.
Freeman's is 50.4. And
that sounds right.
Freeman debuted a year before Rizzo, so it's a pretty accurate scale. So 15 more WAR, that's a significant.
That is significant. I think Rizzo just peaked early and kind of had a couple of rough
Rizzo his first year was negative. It was 450 games. So then he was a 2 WAR guy he was a 1.5 2 WAR guy for 2 years. Then it was 5.3, 5.2, 4.9, 4.3. Then in 18, it dropped to 3.2, 19, 3.8, 2020, obviously the shortened year was 0.9 prorated out. So that's, about 3-ish again, 3 and a bit.
2.6. Yeah.
And then 2.4 and 2.1 the last 2 years. I reversed those. So it's 2.1. So he's dropped. Whereas Freeman, I think, Freeman's is weird. Freeman's first year was negative, then 0.6, 1.7, then 5, 4.4, 3.3, 6.6, 4.6, 4.8, 4.4, 3.2 in the shortened season. 3.2 in 60 games is insane. So that's like a 7 WAR pace.
That's way more than 7 WAR. It's 2.7. You multiply it by.
Oh, is it? Okay. So yeah, it's a lot. It's closer to like 8 or 9.
What was it?
3.2. 3.2. So it's 6.4 plus.
That's an 8.5 WAR season.
Yeah. And then 4.8 in 2021 and then 7.1 last year.
Yeah.
So like
He's getting better, while
So
whereas
I
Rizzo is
think
kind
that
of
but he also has had significantly higher peaks. Like Rizzo's career high in WAR is 5.3, whereas Freeman has had one prorated and one actual 7+ WAR season, and then another 6 WAR season.
yeah.
So I actually don't hate, like, I could see, like, if you told me he was a 35 WAR and he's been in the majors for 12 years, 11 years. Like, if you told me that he was like a 3 WAR guy consistently a year, 3 to 4 for Casas, I could believe that.
Yeah.
In the higher end, yeah.
All right, our next question comes from Forrest Perkins, our Patreon supporter, he says, a lot of the Red Sox 2013 playoff run is on YouTube, so I'm watching it to get some hope for this year. Question for you is, how high were you on Will Middlebrooks? Surprised how he turned out or what you expected? Thanks as always, Forrest Perkins. Middlebrooks was the former top prospect in our system in a thin system. Sorry, top prospect in our rankings in a thin system. I don't know, Ian, can you look at maybe what some of his tweets say?
No, I can't, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, Middlebrooks was the top prospect in a very weak system. And that was one of those times where we have to like do this thing we hate doing where it's like, oh, this guy's your top prospect. You think he's going to be a star, huh? And we have to be like, well, that doesn't mean we think he's going to be a star. He was like, I think peak Will Middlebrooks in this system, Ian, is probably ranked somewhere like where we have Rafaela. Does that sound
I
right?
was gonna say like 5th.
I could see him. It's tough to go apples to apples because here's the thing: is we get more and different data now than we did then.
Yeah, I mean, we go to more
10
games
years
and we
ago.
have more data. Like,
We have way more data, so it's
well,
like, would we
it's
have
not just
seen
we,
something?
but also like not just us has more data. Teams have way more data too. Like, there's
Sure,
just like back then,
sure.
it wasn't, TrackMan was still in its infancy stages. Like, there wasn't all the reliance on like the analytics and everything.
Yeah.
And I
What would
think
we have
that
thought?
in
I don't know.
hindsight, looking back, I feel like we would have been like more cautious with Middlebrooks because of just the approach issues, the high Ks, low walks, things like that.
Yeah, like did he have a high chase rate in the minors? Like,
Yeah,
did
things like
he?
that we know now that
What
we
was the end
didn't
zone
back in the
miss?
day. Yeah,
Yeah.
because like
So
I'm looking at his like statistics and
in the minors.
yeah, in the minors, and like he debuted, it was like 32% K rate, then it was 28, then it was 25, so it was getting better. But then he got up to AAA and it jumped back up to 30, and like, but then the following year it dropped significantly. But then he went up to majors and it was like back in the 26 range, and like, so it's kind of like in that 26 to 30 range for a while.
How many major league games did he wind up getting?
347, I think.
Hmm.
So
I think I thought he would have. To me, that was kind of like a 30th percentile outcome, maybe for him.
I mean, he's basically like, I feel like he's just similar to what Bobby Dahlbeck is now. Like,
Yeah,
um,
better defense at third for
yeah,
Middlebrooks.
but like, yeah, because Middlebrooks. So I'm looking at his career. His first season, he was like a 2 WAR guy in 75 games. 288, 325, 509. But then the following years, 227, 271, 425. He was like half a WAR. He's positive, slightly above average, slightly positive on defense. Then the year after, 191, 256, 265. So it's just, yeah, the offense just fell off a cliff. And I think it's just pitchers, kind of the book came out on him.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly it.
yeah,
It's the adjustment to the adjustment.
yeah. And then because he didn't really, after that initial season, his career, like, he didn't hit it all. It was
Yeah,
227, 191, 212, 111, 211. Obviously, a lot of those are like small samples, like 10,
right.
like 30 PAs. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think that given we would know more now about him than
Mhm.
we did back then,
Yes.
and have a better idea of how to rank him.
All right. Our next question is from Steve, who he has a long email. I'm going to try and get through this here. One of the things that has been notable as the national writers release their org rankings is that heading into the 4th year of Bloom's tenure, we're still not in the upper echelon of talent bases. This is in contrast to programs like the Dodgers or Yankees that have won at the major league level at a higher rate than the Red Sox over that time, and therefore are typically picking behind the Red Sox in the draft, yet are ranked well ahead of them. Bloom deserves a break for the events out of his control, the loss of draft picks and budget for the sign stealing, the COVID year, etc., not to mention the fact that Dombrowski stripped the system to the studs. But they also seem to be making questionable decisions around their talent evaluation. Besides the Workman deal, which was great, the returns for Benintendi, Moreland, Renfro, Springs, and arguably Betts, though he was obviously hampered by Price's contract there, were mediocre at best. Nor does the club seem to have the same reputation for outperforming in their player development in a particular area that systems like the Guardians or Yankees do. So, as the external people closest to our system, do you think the Bloom front office has a problem with player dev, talent identification, or both? Or is it too early to evaluate the front office on that basis, or they've been impacted by factors outside of their control? Thanks, Steve. A terrific question.
That's a great question. I think
we've discussed.
Yes. Well, I think the first thing, though, that needs to be mentioned is when you're calling it the Bloom front office, he's really the only change from the previous regime under
There are some
Dabrowski
small changes that would have happened anyway.
Yes, but like the general, like a lot of the people who are in those player dev and scouting departments are the same guys who are here under Dabrowski. So nothing's really changed with that. Maybe like who has the title has, but it's still someone who came up through the org starting when like Dabrowski was here, or even some of them have been here going back even further than that.
Well, so example, Devin Pearson, Benson. Why can't I think of his name? Pearson. Thank you. Devin Pearson is the new amateur scouting director. So in theory, he's got the draft room now. Paul Taboni's not gone. He got promoted. Mike Rickard, who was Paul Taboni's predecessor, isn't gone. He got promoted. Like those guys are all still here.
Or even saying like pro scouting, like Gus Quaidemom is still here. Like Harrison Slutsky, who's taken over, he was started and has worked his way up. Same thing with player dev, like Ben Crockett's still here. Brian Abraham, as we obviously we had him on the podcast last year. Same with Ben. They talked about their careers. Like they've both been with the Red Sox for a long time. So it's a lot of people in those roles. There hasn't been a lot of turnover. Like the only real people I could think who've come in higher up roles is the guy from Milwaukee. Troutman. And is there anyone else? Am I missing someone? They brought that guy from the Mets too. I don't remember his name.
The international guy.
Yeah, but those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head who came in recently that went like straight into the upper level decision making group.
Well, the Mets international guy just got like a special assignment thing. Like,
really? Okay, yeah, so then it's just Troutman because Troutman is like high up in that brain trust. But other than him, it's like a lot of
Becerra, I think is his name.
Chris Becerra, I think, right? Yeah, but Troutman is like other than him, it's more or less the same. Like it's a lot of the same names. But I think I do think it is a fair point because as you said, the Dodgers have had access. They've had similarly like they've lost picks because or not lost picks, but they've had picks pushed down because of spending.
They've traded a lot of guys.
Similar ranges. They've been doing a lot of trades. I do think it's something maybe we would talk about more on another episode this offseason. We'll dive more into each trade and kind of talk about it because I do think it's a fair point. I do think the return in some of the trades has turned out to be somewhat underwhelming. And,
it has. I wouldn't go with all of those trades though, because I think, for example, we've talked about Mitch Moreland, for example.
Yeah, because this is the hard part is in a lot of those trades they weren't trading anything of value really. Like
exactly. What did you want to get for half a season of Mitch Moreland?
It wasn't even half a season; it was a month.
Right. Right. Fair.
But like,
because that was 2020, right?
Yeah, it was a COVID year. So it's like it's like hard, like, and then and you acknowledge it too with like the Betts trade, like attaching Price to that significantly impacted the return.
Yep.
And so it's like it's tough, but yeah, no, I it's something we've definitely talked about, and I think that is further worth discussing, but in like a bigger platform with more time.
Yeah, and by the way, like for example, Springs, like with the benefit of hindsight, like Tampa got the better of the deal, but like
at the time, no one was saying
at the time.
And that's the hard part.
How could they trade Jeffrey Springs?
Like, and I keep going back to, I think I mentioned this before, but like the Dodgers traded Yordan Alvarez. Like this stuff happens for all teams. Like teams mess up trades. Like if this was a science, trades would never get done because everyone would know what everyone is going to become, and they'll be like, well, we want to trade the guys who aren't going to become anything, and we want to get a guy who's going to become something, and no team would do that.
Right.
So because it's uncertainty, that's how these things get done, and because teams like, and here there's a good example is like. I know there's a certain player who we have in the top 10 who I know some teams have in their top 5 of their system and other teams don't have him like closer to 20. And like, that's how wide the range is of some of these guys. Like it's all going to depend a lot on like certain teams value certain guys differently than other teams. And certain, like, obviously you see some teams have been doing a really good job identifying those players and others have struggled more in that area. And I don't think it's fair to say the Red Sox fall on either end of that spectrum. I think they've had some good deals. They've had some questionable deals, and they've had some deals that are like what do you expect to get anything? Like the same thing, like going back to the Christian Vasquez trade last year. I know some people were saying like, oh, they like that's all they got, like two guys who are like, in the top 30, but none of them are in the top 15. Like that's what like the trade market these days, as we've seen this offseason, is not as robust. Like teams are very reluctant to trade good prospects unless they're getting an elite player back.
Right.
And so I think that I understand where the Red Sox were coming from, where a lot of these trades that people are scrutinizing, like the Benintendi trade, they went for the quantity over the quality because, it's better to have 4 or 5 shots at it than taking one guy. And if that guy fails, you're toast.
Right.
And
Right.
I think that I do wonder, though, how much of the early trades in the high and bloom tenure, excuse me, like the Benintendi trade, were driven by the need to reestablish depth in the farm system too. Like I do wonder if they were a top 15 farm system when he took over, does that trade look different because they don't necessarily need to get 5 guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was talking about that today because, like, look, they didn't take 5 guys for Benintendi, thinking all 5 were future major leaguers. I mean,
If you
you
get
hope.
one major
if they
leaguer,
are great, if you get 1 out of the 5, then great,
yeah,
perfect. That's a win. I think the return for Benintendi being underwhelming, and I think the return for Betts being underwhelming because it's hard to factor in, like, oh, they unloaded half of David Price's contract. Like Jeter Downs missing hurts. Like that's one that hurts when you trade your one of your franchise players in Mookie Betts. Benintendi getting you 5 guys, and the best one looks like it's going to be Josh Winkowski, who is what he is. He's a useful piece. He's a major leaguer. We don't know the role yet, but he'll be a major leaguer. It hurts. It hurts. So, yeah, it's a great question and one that really deserves a more in-depth look, I think. Our final email, Ian, comes from our friend, Josh. He signs it, your friend, Josh. Do you know Josh? I don't know Josh. No, I don't. Oh, all right. Well, I guess we can be friends. It's fine. At any rate, he says, hey guys, thanks as always. You're doing great work. It's appreciated. Let's talk roster construction for positional players. And then he lists the guys definitely making it. Outside of injury, this leaves 1 bench spot. So basically, he's got Devers. Let's see, Yoshida, Turner. It says Kike gives them some nice flexibility on whether the team needs to go infield or outfield, or what are your thoughts on the following players? Okay, so he's counting Mondesi. What are your thoughts on the following players for that last spot? It seems like they're very different players. And he lists Nico Goodrum, Jaron Duran, Bobby Dahlbeck. Is there a dark horse already in the system that I'm missing? Thanks. So first of all, in our projections on the website, which you can see, there's a 2023 roster projection. We are projecting Mondesi to start on the IL based on the reports that he may or may not be ready for the start of the season. Maybe he is ready for the start of the season and it solves a problem. But if he is not ready to start the season, you've got a 4-man bench. It consists of the other catcher. So you've got McGuire and Wong are the catchers. Maybe there's a chance Alfaro makes the team out of spring training, but I doubt it, between the fact that he's going to be at the WBC and the fact that his opt-out isn't until June. I think you just keep the depth for as long as possible unless he significantly outplays Connor Wong, because if you want to add him, you're going to have to DFA someone. Rob Refsnyder, definitely going to be on that bench. So you've got 2 spots. Right now, we're projecting Goodrum and Duran. The reason being is that right now in the roster projection, you've got Kike Hernandez at short, Christian Arroyo at second, and that's it for middle infielders. You need someone who can handle middle infield if Mondesi isn't ready to go on opening day. Goodrum is that guy of the non-roster invites. I guess in theory, David Hamilton is a shortstop. He's not ready for that role yet.
Well, I think, though, that it's pretty clear, or it's not clear, but I would guess that when they can 60-day story, that position will go to whoever the bench shortstop is.
No, well, a bench player.
Bench player. It will go to a bench player, but I think the health of Mondesi will decide whether that is like Goodrum or another shortstop, or potentially maybe an outfielder like Ramel Tapia, someone like that.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is, let's say Mondesi is healthy. I think if Mondesi were healthy, our projection would probably have Mondesi in the starting lineup, Arroyo on the bench, and I would probably go Tapia over Duran for that last spot, because I think Tapia is a guy that is brought in to compete for a major league bench spot, not a guy who's brought in to be like in AAA all year. He's not Christian Stewart. He's a step above Christian Stewart. I guess Greg Allen is a dark horse in that sense as well. Rafaela, they're not going to rush up. Koss is an NRI for a middle infielder. I can't see him winning that spot out of camp. So to me, it comes down to if Mondesi is hurt, then I think you probably go with Goodrum and you keep a guy like Duran up to be the fifth outfielder. I guess you don't have to, but I think also the fact that he's fast with the new rules, the speed could really help play up what he can do on the bench. So they're interesting. Dahlbeck, I think signing Justin Turner, who can play first base, really kind of precludes the chance of Dahlbeck making the team if both Casas and Turner are healthy, Ian. I just can't see Dahlbeck making the team unless one of them is hurt. I don't know if you feel different, but
Yeah, Dahlbeck does not really make a lot of sense on this roster just
it doesn't
because of
fit.
with Turner, you have the third base, first base depth, and then with Duvall can play first base too, and then Arroyo can play third base. Like they don't need, and then if you look at the other guys, they don't need another right-handed hitter on the bench. So, I think that it's a tough fit for him, but I actually do like in terms of what they need at AAA. He actually does fit a pretty big need there because they don't really have another guy that I would be comfortable if one of those guys got hurt breaking up in that role looking at it.
Yeah.
So actually, like, I kind of like his fit as starting the season in AAA.
Yeah, they really don't have a lot of first base depth there. Like there was a while where we didn't even know who to put at first base in AAA because Dahlbeck was in the majors in our projection, and they didn't have anyone that made sense there. Like you were going to be like I think I had Ryan Fitzgerald there for a minute just because it's like okay, well he's the utility guy, sure, put him at first, and he did play first for a fair amount last year, but it seems like they like Devlin Granberg as an outfielder. So anyway, yeah. But fair question. I think we'll see what happens in camp. It'll depend a lot on Mondesi's knee and whether he's ready to start the year at a full go or not. And look, if it's something where he's going to be like a week or two, then maybe I don't know, say it's only a week or two that you're going to be without Mondesi, and like let's say he's starting the year on a rehab assignment in Worcester. What do you do in that case? Do you roll with Hamilton for a week? It's kind of an interesting question.
I
Do you
guess it
go with
depends on what
Dahlbeck and just like
fake it.
if Hernandez
Or
or Arroyo get hurt, then you get someone up the next day? Like,
yeah, because that's the one issue is if like one of them went down in game, Dahlbeck would have to play
I mean,
shortstop.
early in the year, you have like the extra off day or two built in, right?
I wonder if we're going to hear Connor Wong is taking ground balls at second base this spring.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
That was the
Forgot
one that
about
just
that.
hit me is like, I wonder if that's something they do is they try to have Wong have at least be like passable at second base.
Because here's the thing: if Arroyo and Hernandez are playing in the World Baseball Classic, if Puerto Rico advances, like that's going to be some mileage on the tires, and you're going to want to be easing them into the season.
Well, but that's another thing, and it's interesting. Like it's, I mean, in a weird way, it might actually be beneficial for the Red Sox in the sense that it's going to get Hamilton, Valdez, guys like that are going to get a ton of at bats in spring training. Like,
I mean,
so
looking at the major league lineup, Arroyo, Devers, and Hernandez, your three infielders to the left of first base are all going to be at the World Baseball
and then
Classic.
Yoshida's going also and Verdugo,
Yoshida's
so
going
two
also.
outfielders.
Verdugo is going
So
also.
5 position players are going.
5 starting position players.
Yeah, that's what I was saying that like those guys like Dahlbeck, Valdez, Hamilton, like that's why Nick Sogard's there. Like those guys are gonna have to play a lot early in camp. And
Yeah,
like
almost the entire projected AAA roster is either on the 40-man or a non-roster invite.
which is why I mean we'll get into when we start talking about minor league spring training. It's gonna be like I have no idea what they're gonna do with minor league spring training with this because like are they just like they're gonna have to have like the DSL guys who usually don't play in games at the beginning? They're gonna have to play in games because like they don't have enough
Well, we're
bodies
gonna have to. I
otherwise.
think what we'll see is because the World Baseball Classic it has like the pool play, right? So like when the first pools end, you're gonna get some of these guys back.
Right, but I think the pools open the 9th is the first game.
Is the 9th the first game? Because minor league camp opens or games.
A little bit after that.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me look. I think it's the 9th is the first game. So yeah, so pool. Okay, so the first games are the 8th. No, those are exhibition games. Yeah, no, the 8th, Wednesday, the 8th are the first games. So then the pools will finish
Yeah, I got it. It's on the front page. So the first round, okay.
Yeah, it's like the
Here's what it
15th
is,
when
Ian.
the pools end.
The
Yeah.
the Asian pool, the Asian pools open on the 8th and the 9th.
Yeah.
They finish on the 12th and the 13th.
Right.
The US pools are the 11th to the 15th.
Right. So those guys are not going to be back though. Like remember when Xander Bogaerts came back? He didn't like it was a couple days after they were eliminated. So
Oh,
yeah,
and then the Japanese quarterfinals are March 15th and 16th. The US quarterfinals are March 17th and 18th.
So wait, what's Puerto Rico? And they're in the US bracket, right?
They're in Miami, yeah. So they're not going to have to travel.
But even if they make just getting out of the group is going to finish like halfway through spring training. Like,
yeah,
it's gonna be interesting to see how they juggle that because usually like there's a lot of guys who aren't playing games, like they do like batting practice or things like that in the afternoons. But
the baseball, the WBC ends on the 20th. But then keep in mind, like these guys aren't like joining the team on the
no,
11th.
You don't go right into it, and that's why I was citing the Xander Bogaerts situation, which shout out John Mioli.
Yeah, that's right. I
when Bogaerts
that.
rolled into camp. And it was his first day back, and I think it was a couple days. It was like 2 or 3 days after they were eliminated.
And then 14?
Was it 4 days? Yeah. Oh, 14.
14?
Yeah. I think so.
Because it was the year after they won the World Series, because it was like he had been like a minor player, and they were like he had come up and been important at the end of the year, like for Middlebrooks, to tie it back into the other email. And when he got back to camp, they were literally just having him walk back and forth between the two.
I think we counted it was like 18. He hit first in every inning in both games for the first like 8 innings. It was like 16 at bats or something.
Yeah.
And like the funniest part was when he would hit, he would just jog to first base every time. He never actually ran the ball out.
Yeah.
Because it was like he was just seeing pitches. Yeah. But that's like we're gonna have a lot of situations like that. But by the time those guys come back, it's gonna be like, mid to late March. Like, so it's going to be interesting to see how they manage that. And I think it's why we're seeing so many NRIs by like some guys who are just like Nick Sogard is he's someone I think I've talked about a little before.
Yeah, we like him.
Like scouts like him because he's someone who you can throw in a big league spring training game and have no qualms about it. He can play multiple positions and he'll go up there and he's not going to like strike out 45% of the time. Like, you know what I mean? He'll put the ball in play. He's probably going to hit, 205, but it's fine. Like, and he'll field well enough that your pitchers aren't going to notice anything. Yeah. Like guys like that are going to get a ton of playing time. And I think with the Red Sox, it'll be a really good look at them, at guys like Hamilton, Christian Koss, who's obviously an NRI, but he's someone kind of interesting. Emmanuel Valdez, Bobby Dahlbeck is going to get a ton of at bats. Like,
I mean, you're going to get the guys we have projected for Portland playing in major league games.
Oh yeah. Well,
that's you're going to see Nico Cavadas. You're going to see Nick York.
Matthew Lugo, like Steven Scott got NRIs. Like those guys, I like usually I feel like this first round of cuts that were not cuts from the org, but cuts from the NRIs, it's going to be pushed way back. Like the schedule we're used to seeing with spring training is not going to be what we're going to get this year.
And of course, this year we're going to spring training a week earlier.
Yeah.
Go team.
But you know what? That could work out well because it might mean we see guys that might not be playing later in camp.
As long as we see Salem, I don't care. Just show me that Salem team, man. That Salem team is going to be loaded. All right. Well, us dreaming about spring training is probably a good place to leave it off. Thank you all for listening and for the download. Thank you all for the emails. Again, it's podcast@soxprospects.com. And we'll wrap it up. You can follow us on Twitter. You can follow the site @SoxProspects. You can follow me @SP Chris Hatfield. And you can follow Ian @Ian Cundall. That's IANCUNDALL. Of course, send us emails. Go to the website, soxprospects.com. Check out our news page. Check out our season project, our roster projections. Check out our draft histories, etc. Join us in the forum. You think Twitter stinks? Join us in the forum. Much more intelligent discussion happening there than places like Twitter. And of course, you can support us on patreon.com/SoxProspects. This week's $5 level Patreon supporters we want to thank are Andreas Goldstrand, Corey Perrick, Forrest Perkins, Mark Herman, Brian Cowan, Andrew K., Jeff Harwood, Dusty G., Michael Murphy, and Bob and Trone. Thank you all for your support. Of course, thank you all for listening, for supporting us that way, and all of our Patreon supporters of any level. Thank you so much. We'll be back in your eardrums soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.